By 2032, you'd really have to see about 2/3 of cars and light trucks having a plug.
That's incredible. Is that possible?
Huge leap. Adoption is increasing still, despite some gloomy headlines out of the fourth quarter last year. More of these cars are being sold even than conventional cars right now. The increase, rather, in sales is higher than the increase for conventional cars.
Yeah.
There's a lot of enthusiasm from some quarters for EVs that are going to get cheaper as battery prices come down.
Okay.
So there's a lot of enthusiasm in some quarters. Of course, there's a lot of people who are concerned about these rules and say they're a de facto
cheaper
EV
would
mandate.
unlock a lot, right? That's the first thing you hear. Maybe after range, to your point, people have concerns about the charging network, but it's the cost that it's a high barrier to entry. So obviously the administration is trying to do that. I'm fascinated by the reaction by automakers. Clearly this is not the type of thing they want to hear, but they were applauding the addition of hybrids, which seems like a very important part of this story. We've actually seen hybrids outselling EVs recently in terms of what people are comfortable buying.
Right. Plug-in hybrids in particular have taken, grown in interest. And that is, even though it's a more expensive setup, you've got two drivetrains instead of just a battery electric approach. They're clearly positive for consumers who are worried about range, who are worried about finding that next charging station. And so obviously Detroit and the automakers really wanted this flexibility, and they got it. They got a final rule that was easier to comply with than the initial proposal.
And that was a healthy round of lobbying. How did they get it done?
I think the fact that the United Auto Workers striked last year and made clear that they were concerned about the pace of the transition.
Sure, yeah.
That was a factor here. For the EPA, getting the automakers on board. To be sure, they're concerned. They think this is a challenge. A lot has to go right. Mm-hmm. But getting automakers to at least, clap a little bit means that these rules are more durable. They're more likely to not get a challenge from the auto industry and to withstand the test of time.
Because we're talking about them changing their lineups, essentially, right? This is, if you're going to essentially force consumers to buy EVs, you need to stop selling cars with gas engines.
Right. If you can have gas models clearly under this rule, but you're going to have to offset. Exactly. And the concern that opponents raise is that means those cars are going to be more expensive. They're going to be harder to find. Mm-hmm. And in some areas of the country, they may be what you really need, certainly over the next few years.
Is this coupled with enhancements maybe from the infrastructure law to extend and make the charging network more continuous?
Right. We are benefiting from, and this industry will benefit from, tremendous money that's coming out of both the infrastructure law and the Inflation Reduction Act.
Okay.
That's going into chargers. Obviously, that's also supporting some battery manufacturing in the U.S.
Yeah.
All of that's supposed to help basically bring this infrastructure along.
Because you can't have one without the other, I guess, here. But you know how politics works. If Donald Trump came back to the White House, this all gets wiped away. As an executive action, right?
Indeed. I mean, this is an EPA rulemaking. They would have to go through the process of undoing it, which is something he did last time.
Sure.
And so it might take a few years. But the fact that automakers are buying into this revised schedule will help.
And that's important, though. A few years, that means they're going to be they're going to be retooling their factories already by then, which might be incentive to keep it in place.
They prefer some certainty, and I think that's an argument that you would hear them make if Trump is elected and wants to disband this. Now, to be clear, a President Trump might not care too much about what the automakers want. Right. He may also, be looking to consumer support and what consumers and voters want.
You wonder, look, it's going to be wherever the wind is blowing, I guess, at that moment. But with his appeal to UAW members, you mentioned the union. Those are a lot of Trump voters not into this EV transition, or at least an accelerated, incentivized transition. And running against this is music in Detroit, right?
It cuts different ways.
Yeah.
Clearly, this was softened partly to deal with those UAW concerns. I mean, the pitch that the president is making is, look, this is the future of the industry. The future of cars is electric. Yep. Do we in the U.S. want to make those cars, or do we want to let China compete against us to take our market share? Mm-hmm. And so that's the compelling argument that the president is trying to advance and win over Detroit with.